My favorite memory at Butler is when Mr. Lemos was videoing our Harlem Shake and Taylor pushed me and I fell off a chair.
Our favorite memory of Butler was when
we made a Harlem Shake in Mrs. Erickson's 5th hour class.
My favorite memory from Butler was all those fun field trips.
My favorite memory at Butler was in 6th grade when I ran into a door, and ever since then my friends never let me forget it.
Was dissecting the fetal pig in science class.
Favorite memory at Butler Middle School was the obstacle course in gym.
My favorite memory is when my friend ran into the door.
My favorite memory at Butler was the fetal pig dissection.
My favorite memory at Butler is doing the fetal pig dissection in science.
Sixth and seventh graders, always work hard in all your classes, try as hard as you possibly can because it will benefit you in the long run.
Study hard and do your best in school.
Do your homework and just don't get in fights at school. Just be a good kid.
Get lots of sleep.
Walk on the right side of the hallway.
Don't mess up, because if you do, it's gonna affect your future in high school and college. And bring a regular lunch, because a lunch in 8th grade is stupid. And I don't know.
Okay, so advice is get the pink cookies because they're good. Get them while they last.
My advice to you guys is get your homework done on time. You won't regret it.
Okay, so some advice I'd like to give to the 6th and 7th graders is just take school seriously, because I promise in 8th grade you're whoa, so much to do. So make sure you're paying attention to what you're doing and also to walk quickly in the halls.
My advice to the 6th and 7th graders is to not be afraid to be yourself, because that's how you find out who your real friends are.
the advice I have for 6th and 7th graders is not to be nervous for 8th grade, just to have fun with it.
My advice for any 6th or 7th graders is to stay out of drama.
My advice is for the 6th and 7th graders to stay focused and try to do well in school and enjoy the classes and to not bully kids either.
My advice for 7th graders and 6th graders is stay organized.
Okay, my advice to the 6th and 7th graders is, I guess, don't spend middle school worrying about if guys or girls like you, because it isn't important. As long as you have good friends, then that's all you really need to worry about.
My advice is don't try not to get caught up in a bunch of drama, especially with your friends, because it just doesn't turn out to be fun. It's not worth it.
Before you start slacking off, make sure your teachers like you, because then when you do slack off, then they won't really care, I guess.
So my advice for 6th and 7th graders would be to just relax and go with the flow. You won't get shoved in a locker. If I had any advice for the 6th and 7th graders, it would be to avoid the 8th graders. They're bigger, better, smarter, and stronger than you are. So just walk your own path.
I want to be a pastry chef.
I'm going to be the next O'Brien.
I want to be a nurse. I want to be a psychologist.
When I grow up, I want to be a zoologist.
I want to be an architect.
When I grow up, I want to be an ultrasound technician.
When I grow up, I want to be a DJ.
Up, I plan on being an astrophysicist. My dad was originally an engineer, and I started following in his footsteps, but then I learned more about physics and got interested in it.
I don't have a favorite Butler staff. All of them are really cool, and I really love them. I'm really gonna miss them, and hopefully they miss me.
Mrs. O, because she wasn't mean and she always let us do stuff. Yeah.
My favorite Butler staff member was definitely Mr. Lair, because he was really funny and always took jokes very well, even though some of them weren't that funny.
Even though he has weird hobbies, he's still the best teacher at Butler.
I also have to agree with Caitlin. My favorite teacher was Mr. Lair because he's so fun. He makes class very fun, and all the things that we did were very beneficial to us, and he made class really fun. And I always wanted to go to history every day.
And he's going to make sure the South wins in both of his classes.
Yep.
Mr. LaRue is my favorite teacher at Butler because he never gives us homework and he's like cool because like the other day he gave me like mints out of the jar. Like I got it right and he gave me mints out of the jar. Mr. LaRue is my favorite teacher at Butler.
Dubs, because he's a really cool guy and he always makes my day better when I'm not having a good day.
Mr. Paulson, because he was a really good teacher.
Mr. Lair was my favorite teacher over this year because he brings enjoyment to the class by showing movies and by doing other fun activities instead of just having a boring lecture for our class.
Mrs. Anderson, because she's a really good art teacher.
Mr. Lair, because kind of humor and he's funny and he teaches about history. Good.
My favorite teacher was Mrs. Schlitt because we could relate to her. She always told us stories about her life and she tried to keep us safe from everything.
Okay, Mr. Lair is my favorite teacher because he's super fun and he's just an awesome teacher.
My favorite staff members are probably Mr. Syra, Mrs. Sark, and Mr. Lammers because they just don't teach you how to learn, but they also teach you how to live.
Mr. Lammers is my favorite teacher because he has helped me over the 3 years I've been here, and he has let me do extra projects with him.
Mrs. O because she was always there when I needed her and she made 8th grade fun for me.
My favorite Butler staff is Mr. Lair because he's just a history beast.
So my favorite teacher is Mr. Lemos because he helps you a lot and whatever problem you have, he will solve it for you.
My favorite Butler teachers are Mrs. Sark and Mr. LaRue because they're both very nice and very energetic and they help you a lot during school.
My favorite Butler staff is Miss Erickson because she's cool and we besties.
Alright, my favorite teacher was Mr. Lair because he made U.S. history fun, and without him, I would have hated U.S. history.
My favorite teacher was Mr. LaRue because he really helped me with my math and learning center.
My favorite teacher was Mr. Paulson and Miss Raz.
My favorite teacher at Butler was Mr. Caesars because he was really funny and he was fun to be around.
My favorite teacher is Mr. LaRue because he's fun.
My favorite Butler staff member would be Mrs. Ramasco because she gives you a lot of freedom when you're doing work as long as you get it done.
Why? Mr. Paulson, 6th grade, he was just amazing.
Mr. Caesars is my favorite staff member. He makes learning really fun, and when you're in 8th grade, be sure to get Mr. Caesars.
Okay. My favorite staff member is Mr. Paulson because he's the greatest teacher ever.
My favorite Butler staff members are Mr. Caesars, Mr. Lammers, and probably Senora Jones because they make learning really fun and makes class a lot more enjoyable.
Okay, go.
Okay, favorite staff member is Mr. LaRue because he's cool and he's bald.
Alright, so my favorite staff member from Butler Middle School is Mr. Lair because he was cool, nice, and a good teacher.
My favorite teacher was Miss Colvin and Mr. Caesars because they have an awesome class.
My favorite staff member at Butler is Miss Zach because she's really pretty.
My favorite staff members at Butler are probably Mr. Lair, Senora Jones, and Miss O because they're all really funny and make learning really fun.
Mr. LaRue is my favorite staff member because he's cool and his class is really fun.
My favorite staff is Mr. Syra. I did.
Go.
My favorite Butler staff member is Mr. LaRue.
My favorite Butler staff member is Mr. Kiyabi. He is a 6th grade teacher, and he makes learning really fun.
My favorite staff member was Coach Warzenloft.
My favorite staff member is Mr. Lammers because he's fun.
My favorite Butler staff person is Mr. Paulson because I can look up to him.
I like Dobbs and I like Caesars. Okay, my favorite teacher at Butler is Mr. LaRue because the DC trip and it was fun.
My favorite Butler staff is Mrs. Erickson because she's really nice and funny and she makes class fun.
My favorite Butler staff member is Mrs. Houch because she's amazing.
Mr. Lammers and Mr. Caesars. My favorite teacher is Mr. Syra because he made math fun, and even though he used half of the class to tell his own stories, we still always ended up learning something.
Our favorite Butler staff teacher is Mr. Caesars.
Because he's a load of fun. I mean, you can't do anything boring with Caesars.
The most important lesson I've learned at Butler is think before you speak.
Okay, the biggest lesson I learned at Butler is to not get in trouble because they have really bad punishments. Like, look, every year they get worse and worse, so probably if you guys do something really bad, you'll get in even more trouble. So just advice to stay out of trouble.
The most important lesson I've learned at Butler is to just be yourself and do your best.
My most important lesson here at Butler is not to put my hand in front of a subway.
The most important lesson I learned from Butler is to be yourself because that's all you're going to be.
The most important lesson I learned at Butler is to be yourself because if you find two friends, then they'll appreciate you for who you are.